Good morning. Since it got quiet, we thought we'd throw a meeting. I am State Representative Jonathan Steinberg, co-chair of the Amazing Energy and Technology Committee that has had a very interesting run so far. We are here today for what it may be our final JF session. And it's certainly not the end of our run, but it is near the end of the committee process. And we very much appreciate everybody's participation to this point. We'll get more into that later. I will offer an opportunity for some initial remarks to my wonderful co-chair, Senator Needleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do agree that what we're getting out of committee is all work in process. We have a lot of work to do, as always with energy. Just so much that has to be refined and doing what we can to have no unintended consequences here. I want to thank the committee for continuing to work together in a collaborative way. My co-chair will thank all of the nonpartisan staff that we have that's been amazing to work with. I do want to say officially for the record that my extraordinary legislative aide, Nate Spencer, is leaving. We have today is his last day. He stayed through today. We will, my legislative aide will be Gina Block. Is coming up to speed. Nate has become a friend, a confidant, somebody I've really enjoyed working with, similar to the way Brooke was before she left. But people move on in their best interest. So I want to thank you. And I think you've been a great asset to the committee. You understand the policy side of this now. So all that work hopefully is something that you take with you in your next job. And know that I will miss you. And I am, yeah, change is good. Sometimes change is hard. So thank you.
I think we would all agree that we will very much miss Nate, not merely for his capabilities, but for who he is. And I'm sure we'll all make an effort to keep up. I will also say that we on the committee will miss Nate because of his ability to help us work with Senator Needleman. And things will get harder from here. How to be said. On that note, welcome Representative Mara for some opening remarks.
Thank you so much. I think I have appreciated the work we've done so far in this committee, but more importantly, I appreciate the welcoming from the chairs to continue our work as we finish our last meeting. And I just also want to second the best of luck to Nate Spencer. He's clearly not helping out my caucus, but every time I walk in, he is very much has that welcoming demeanor that I appreciate and have grown very fond of. So best of luck to you, Nate, and let's get moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And on Zoom today, we have Senator Fazio. Good morning.
Thank you, Representative. I have appreciated the work we've done so far, but know that we have a lot more work to do on the Energy and Technology Committee in the months to come before the end of session. I'll save the end of the meeting for thanking the nonpartisan staff and the HRO and SRO staff for their work for this year's committee. But in the meantime, I do want to wish Nate the best of luck. He really is, he's a good person and he's a good aide to Senator Needleman. I think that good members of the staff and good people on both sides of the aisle in the state government make the state government better. And Nate's one of those people. So we're wishing him the best.
Thank you, Senator. And without further ado, let's get to today's agenda. We have 7 bills to review and then later 1 bill to be referred. The first bill up for consideration today is Senate Bill 1194, an act concerning the regulation of public utilities. This is a JFS to the floor, LCO 6169. Do I have a motion? Moved by Senator Newman. Do I have a second? Seconded by Representative Winter. This bill is a bill that we raised at the beginning of session with the prospect of further consideration of changes to the regulation of public utilities in the state. At this juncture, it is not a fully baked concept. We desire to keep it afloat for purposes of further discussion as session plays out. There are a lot of dynamics at play right now in our energy issues in the state, and many of them involve our working relationship with the utilities. We as chairs ask committee members to consider moving this bill out of committee so we can maintain our flexibility going forward. Are there any questions or comments? Representative Mara.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I am torn on this bill, I must say. I do believe that there is a lot of a very good idea here. We need to find a way forward for using standard service. However, how this bill is written now, I believe we have some concerns. It was my thought to make an amendment, but out of the bipartisan nature that you guys have extended, I think that, moving forward and having continued discussions might be the best idea here, because as we're looking at how the procurement happens within our electric distribution companies versus, working with the procurement manager, my understanding is that such approvals really need to happen at the time that these procurements are made. So I would like to have continued discussion with you guys moving forward to make sure that this works not only for PURA, this works for our electric distribution companies, and more importantly, at the end of the day, this is going to be beneficial to our ratepayers. So I will be a yes on this today in hopes that we can move forward. And that's all. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And we look forward to those conversations. That mirrors our intent for this bill. And if this bill is to move forward, we need to come up with ways that clearly benefit ratepayers. Any other questions or comments? Representative Buckby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wish I could share the enthusiasm. While I do appreciate the words of intent, this bill needs really to have more involvement from the utilities directly. They're going to be our partners going through with this. My fear is that history repeats itself. And when we put forth SB 7 2 years ago, the utilities weren't brought to the table until very late. So I think that should be more of a collaboration. The fact that something is not fully baked, and here we are putting it out to go in again, straight to the floor. I have concerns. So that's my biggest concern, is that we have JF deadlines, and I understand everyone's under a lot of pressure and a lot of things to happen, but that's what the committee process is for, to finalize those pieces so that we put something out of committee that we know we can stand by, and especially at this point for our ratepayers. And I don't see this as a fully cooked piece of legislation, and therefore I can't support it. I hope that the good leadership of this committee can work on something prior to it hitting the floor. But as it reads now, I most certainly could not support. But thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Certainly understand your point of view. One of the challenges of being a smaller B committee is we have such early deadlines. It really puts a lot of pressure on us. And maybe we fall back on that sometimes as a crutch, that not everything is totally baked. Maybe it could be. We can work on that. Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief in my comments, but I'm hopeful that this committee will beg my indulgence. I was not able to have an amendment drafted for today, but my hope is that this committee will consider an amendment to a bill like this in the future, or consideration for topics that weren't raised in the opportunity for a public hearing. Last week, there was a fire on a solar array in my community. and it has been the cause of significant community distress. The solar installation in East Windsor has been a long-standing community nuisance. There have been years of excessive noise, commentary on poor design, and inaction from the Connecticut Siting Council, the developer, and the operator. Then after incident with arcing on Friday, Saturday, and then ultimately a fire on Tuesday at the location of the noisy inverters, we were sort of found ourselves navigating what is new territory. Now, if this had been a natural gas fire, Pura would have deployed the natural gas search, the natural gas committee that's responsible through Pura to have oversight over these. If it had been, God forbid, an incident that happened at Millstone, there is a federal equivalent agency or oversight group that would have investigated and addressed this concern. But it seems that we sometimes presume safety when it comes to these renewable generators. And I am asking for this committee to codify the appropriate paths forward to ensure that appropriate steps are being taken. I will tell you, I have benefited from positive communications with the utilities. They are telling us that they are working collaboratively. They will meet the fire marshal's expectations of safety prior to re-energization. However, it's concerning to me that we do not have a sign-off in process where it would require Pura and OCC and DEEP to say, after a fire at a utility site, these minimum standards need to be met and signed off by appropriate engineering staff that are independent from the utility companies for review, and that there's not somewhere within the state oversight and expertise loaned to communities navigating these strenuous situations. So I'm hopeful and optimistic that we can draft language that codifies this based on frameworks that already exist in natural gas and nuclear, not creating anything new, but just making sure that we're duplicative when it comes to renewable challenges where there's a fire. This community has been plagued by noise concerns and gross negligence from the generator in response to just being a kind and appropriate neighbor. We have lots of solar in my community, as you all know, much of my community's chagrin. This one is an example of a very bad actor. And so we are looking to make sure that we have accountability moving forward, that if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, the source of the fire very well may have been the duck. And so I'd like to make sure that we're in a situation where, the fire was at the source of the noise complaint. We are judiciously and rigorously investigating, and we're making sure that there's not a risk to my community prior to re-energization. And I just beg the committee's indulgence in me continuing to work with leadership. And I certainly encourage bipartisan collaboration on this moving forward. I think that we just need to make sure that we don't allow a safety concern to go unaddressed, even though the fire happened after our last public hearing and would have missed the opportunity for us to get an amendment or language drafted in that setting. But we certainly shouldn't wait another year for safety. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Foster. Yes, this is something that doesn't always lend itself to the rhythms of the legislative process. And yet there's a measure of urgency here. We may not have anticipated this kind of bad outcome, but we should certainly be making efforts to make sure it doesn't happen again, or at least we're taking all preventative steps to keep it from happening. I, for one, would be glad to engage in dialogue with you and the rankings and the responsible agencies to have that conversation, whether it results in legislation this session. At the very least, we can advance the ball and make sure that everyone's on the same page should any sort of emergency like this occur again, that there's a protocol that all have agreed to. So thanks for putting it on our radar. Sorry the timing hasn't worked out. It's still possible we could make it work, but it's hard at this point in the game. Representative Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm definitely supportive of the bill and the flexibility to move to self-service. I think that the substitute language, though, appears to move from having an annual procurement plan process to what looks like an ongoing procurement plan process. And I think it seems like one of the themes that's come up again and again during the committee meetings has been how there have been these shocks to the energy markets. So I think having that annual process is healthy in terms of reassessing where we are strategically, especially if we're looking at allowing the utilities to purchase specific market products. And that it could be worthwhile to also, if we're going down that path, require some comparison of the self-service products to the full service products. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. You raise a good point, and we've had some of these conversations during this session about the pros and cons of our existing procurement process, the timing, the size of procurements. For the most part, it seemed to work for us for a long time, but the volatility in the marketplace these days definitely calls attention to our strategy. And it's worthy of further conversation. It's something we can keep talking about. We don't want to necessarily tie the hands of anybody, but if we can increase flexibility to the benefit of ratepayers, that's something we ought to look at. Any other comments or questions? If not, I believe we are ready for a roll call vote. Madam Clerk.
This is a roll call vote for item number 1 on the agenda, or item 3, number 1 on the agenda. To JFS Senate Bill number 1194 to the floor with LCO number 6169. Senator Needleman,
Yes.
Representative Steinberg,
Yes.
Senator Fazio,
Yes.
Representative Mara,
Mara votes yes.
Representative Sanchez,
Representative Sanchez, yes.
Senator Maroney, Representative Ali Brennan, Senator Cabrera, Representative D'Amico,
D'Amico votes yes.
Representative Gresco, Representative Horn, Senator Marr, Senator McCrory, Representative Mushinski,
Mushinski, yes.
Representative Piscopo. Mushinski, Rep Mushinski, could you say that again with your camera on? Rep Mushinski,
Mushinski, yes.
we still can't see you. Rep Mushinski, we still can't see your face.
Mushinski, yes.
Perfect, thank you. Rep Piscopo. Representative Yacarino. Representative Bucksbaum. Representative Constantine. Representative Buckby.
No.
Representative Foster.
Foster votes yes.
Representative Jensen.
No.
Representative Canino. Representative Winter.
Yes.
Representative Gothier. And Representative Hughes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. You may have the sense that there's a lot else going on today. Many of our members are voting bills and other committees or having public hearings. And for that reason, we will be holding votes open till 2 p.m. this afternoon. I imagine virtually all of our committee colleagues will have an opportunity by then. We will move along to item 2 on our agenda for today, which is Senate Bill 1290, an act concerning the Legislative Commissioner's recommendations for technical revisions to statutes concerning energy and technology. This is a JF to the floor. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved and seconded by Needleman and Winter. This is the committee's annual tech bill, which, as it sounds, involve technical changes to statutes, often driven by statutory changes we make elsewhere. It is probably still not a finished document because there may be other things that pop up between now and then, but it is just that, very straightforward, not intended to advance or change policy in any substantive way. And I will open up for comments or questions. Representative Mara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We can move this to a consent calendar.
Only if we create one first.
I move that we start a consent calendar.
Are there any objections to starting a consent calendar? If not, we will so create it. And it was Representative Mara's recommendation to move item 2, Senate Bill 1290 to the consent calendar. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are there any objections? If not, 1290 will be moved to the consent calendar. Thank you, Senator Mara. That will allow us to move to item 3 on the agenda, Senate Bill 1292, an act concerning energy and water efficiency requirements for artificial intelligence data centers. This is a JFS to the floor. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Those of us who remember the testimony in the hearing indicate that we've had some debate about how best for us to welcome the commerce brought by data centers into the state of Connecticut. It poses new challenges to us, in this case, not only from the energy side, but also potentially water usage. Though I think we learned that the conspicuous use of water may not actually obtain with the newer data centers, that many of them use recycled water in a loop and that does not involve as large amounts of water. But we are keeping this bill alive for a couple of reasons, one of which is to look at the impact of their backup generation systems and to allow us, if things should transpire in the next month or two, to give us a different perspective on data centers, that we can do everything with our power to both welcome them, but also provide adequate protections regarding safety and reliability that are very important to us here in the state. Are there any other comments or questions? Representative Buckby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't have until your synopsis at that point. My understanding is this basically is now simply a study, but the way you just explained made it feel like in the next month and a half, hey, we might have some changes we can make on the spot. Is there anything else intended to go into this to change before we close out session this year?
Good question. To your point, it is a study because that's where we feel is sort of safest right now with what we know right now. Could it change? Possibly. It would only be done in consultation with all the interested parties. I don't want to put a probability on it, but we're living in a very fast changing world in terms of the energy landscape. Many things are going on at the federal level that have been very difficult to anticipate. So we're keeping our options open. Right now, it's a study.
I appreciate that. And considering the weight and magnitude of what this bill actually does represent, I would hope we didn't rush anything through this year in session. I agree with getting the study done. I'm happy to vote for the study. I'm concerned if that will be a different intent going forward. That's all.
Hard to say, but right now our intent is to do a study bill with what we know today. I just wish I had a greater confidence in my crystal ball to help predict the future. Representative Mara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to add SB 1292 to the consent calendar.
Any objections to adding this item to the consent calendar? If not, Madam Clerk, please add Senate Bill 1292 to the consent calendar. Thank you, Representative Mara. We will move on to item 4 of today's agenda, Senate Bill 1353, an act concerning subsidies for new electricity demand. This is a JFS to the Finance Committee for a number of reasons, which will be pretty self-evident. Do I have a motion? Come on, people.
So moved.
Second,
Moved and seconded. This is another subject for which we've had a lot of discussion this session. In this particular instance, the fiscal impact is something that we need to have addressed by the money committees. We're not exactly sure what its prospects are for moving forward, but I think we would all agree that this is a very important consideration as we move forward. And I hope we can all support moving into the finance committee and having that conversation there. Comments or questions? Representative Mara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to add SB 1353 to the consent calendar.
Are there any such objections? Pardon me. One moment. Our LCO has reminded me that it would be helpful if I included the LCO number. In this case is 6641. We're all singing off the same song sheet. Seeing no objections to adding the consent calendar, we will do so. We will now move to item 5 of the agenda. Senate Bill 1354, an act prohibiting mergers of certain utility companies. This is a JF to the floor. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
second,
Moved and seconded. Mergers have been a very interesting subject in Connecticut and clearly not, limited to our recent experience. We continue to harbor concerns about mergers in the future. This bill is also not fully fleshed out, but it does bring forward the issue that we need to remain vigilant on, which is the impact to the citizens of Connecticut when mergers take place. We are in the midst of watching the planned merger of Aquarian, and it raised some issues, as mergers often do, about whether we're looking out for the interests of ratepayers in particular. And this will allow us to continue the conversation about whether we need to have some framework, some structure around mergers in the future. And I'll leave it at that. Are there comments or questions? Seeing none, I believe we're ready for a roll call vote.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Fazio. I have this. Please go ahead.
And thank you for the promotion to the House. I will be opposing this bill today. I think it's overly prescriptive. It's too broad. Listen, we need PURA to be protecting our consumers. We need good policies to protect our consumers, but we also cannot make it overly difficult for people to invest in the electric grid, which this would do, or our gas infrastructure, and so on and so forth. And again, I find it ironic that we're advancing this legislation at the same time that the most questionable merger or acquisition in the utility space, namely the Aquarian Water sale to the Regional Water Authority, which was done with about 2 days' notice under legislation, or approval of which was given under 2 days' notice under legislation, has not been addressed by this General Assembly. And we have a high degree of confidence that this could lead to, this transaction could lead to higher water rates for Western Connecticut. Again, this wouldn't address that, but this would very broadly address mergers and acquisitions in the utility space in a very, very prohibitive way. It doesn't make sense to me. I would have liked to see something happen to protect Aquarian water consumers, give them more confidence, give them, say, PURA protections like most utility customers get with their pending acquisition. Unfortunately, this piece of legislation does not address the single merger or acquisition issue related to utilities, where we've heard the greatest public outcry and concern, in addition to the concerns from our towns and cities for selectmen and mayor. So I'll be voting no on this because I do think it's a bad bill, but I also am frustrated, and I know that's a frustration shared by others, that this General Assembly went in one direction on the Aquarian water sale and has not looked back to reassess whether there was errors there. I think we'll live to regret that as a state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Sorry for the promotion. I tend to concur with your opinion about what transpired last year in order to facilitate the Aquarian sale. I do not believe this was the legislature's finest hour. And I don't even think it observed good process. And one of the reasons we might want to keep this bill alive is to have a conversation about how we can be prepared for the next merger conversation, that we could anticipate some of the things that we want to make sure are considered before such mergers go forward. So I remain open-minded on this. Senator Needleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I certainly share some Senator Fazio's concerns, but I'm deeply concerned about what has happened in the last 10 years, where we have allowed our local regulated public utilities to be acquired by out-of-state and in some cases out-of-country corporations that in the regulatory process makes things much harder to actually regulate. I've said it probably 100 times, and I'll say it again. Multi-platform, multi-jurisdictional public utilities with shared overhead costs going from the parent company down to the units are very hard to regulate because there is no one regulator that regulates the entire entity. I think that's been a transformative change, certainly not only here, but all over. And I don't think that necessarily it's been better. The proclaiming that this will lead to greater efficiencies, to me, doesn't quite feel that way, because looking at someone's books makes it's harder to look at someone's books when you have a shared services line there, because you then have to delve into the overhead expenses allocated by corporations that do not reside in the state, that have regulated and unregulated businesses. So for the purpose of continuing a conversation, I don't know that as written, this law is appropriate yet, but I do think that there has been enough of an outcry by the public that says, hey, who actually owns these companies and what's our role on their board of directors? Do we have governance authority? And in many cases, I don't think we do. And whether it's ISO or Avangrid or Eversource, I like to have oversight locally over these utilities and not have these broad buckets of shared expenses that show up on that are allocations from parent companies that are very, very hard to regulate. So I think that this is worth a continuing conversation. There may be some issues about restraint of trade that we would have to overcome, but I think this is in response to concerns by people in the state of Connecticut who look at their utility and wonder who actually owns them. So.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Buckby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the banter. And one of the things that keeps coming up is that we should have further conversations. I don't see where we need to have legislation to have conversations. These conversations can happen. We can discuss with some of these. We can have more open discussion with all of these organizations. But the more we cut down on possibility of other companies coming to Connecticut that could help lower the cost, I think, just like I mentioned in the last meeting with Rex, we're handcuffing ourselves by not allowing this. So I see this as I think we have like a small bakery going here at 2 a.m. Nothing's fully baked. Everything we're seeing on the agenda today is a menu full of raw dough. And I have a tough time putting forth a yes vote with something like this that could eventually hurt the ratepayer by not allowing that competition in the state. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of discussion. I'm sure there'll be plenty of robust discussion, as my good colleague would say, across the way. But I really don't believe that this is ready for legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And I will note that we have been very open-minded and had a number of bills this session that would promote competition, and we still have a number of those bills. So we are looking at protecting the ratepayers on both ends, both by hopefully driving down costs from competition, but also protecting them from other ramifications that are very hard to anticipate. Are there other questions or comments? If not, Madam Clerk, we're ready for a roll call vote.
This is a roll call vote on item 3, number 5 on the agenda, Senate Bill 1354 to JF to the floor. Senator Needleman,
Yes.
Representative Steinberg,
Yes.
Senator Fazio,
No.
Representative Mara,
Mara votes no.
Representative Sanchez,
Sanchez votes yes.
Senator Maroney,
Senator Maroney votes yes.
Representative Ali Brennan, Senator Cabrera, Representative D'Amico, Representative Gresco, Representative Horn,
wanted at the time. Sometimes there's a mismatch between what the agency was thinking about.
Senator Marr,
But these are all from like early fall, sometimes as early as like September.
Senator McCrory,
So often
Representative Mushinski,
switched course in the 5 or 6 months since this initial request was put in.
Representative Mushinski.
You can also see different approaches where
Could you vote with your microphone on? Sorry. Oh. Representative Piscopo. Representative Yacarino.
No.
Representative Bucksbaum. Representative Constantine.
Yes.
Representative Buckby.
No.
Representative Foster.
Rep. Foster votes yes.
Representative Jensen.
No.
Representative Canino. Representative Winter.
Yes.
Representative Gauthier. And Representative Hughes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Again, we will be holding votes open till 2 p.m. this afternoon. We will now move on to item 6 on today's agenda, House Bill 7017, an act establishing a task force to study transmission and grid enhancing technologies. This is a JFS to the floor, LCO 6647. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Appropriately, do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. This is the infamous GETS bill that we've been talking about since last year, and I want to commend Representative Foster for her hard work on this since we first started talking about the opportunity that grid enhancing technologies can represent here in the state of Connecticut. If we are trending towards more challenges, both in terms of supply and in terms of affordability, we want to get the most we can out of our existing network. And by encouraging the GETS technologies examinations, we are really looking out for ratepayers in the best way possible. We know the utilities are doing some of this work. What we're trying to do with this study is to assure that everything we could be doing to improve the reliability of the grid is being considered. And I'm very pleased with where we are with this bill at this point, but I'm sure we could continue to enhance it. Are there any questions or comments? Representative Mara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I kind of look through this bill, I have some questions on, there's commissioner several times, but it doesn't actually define who who the commissioner is. So I don't know if this is referring to the chair of Pura or there was no definition in there. So
If you'll bear with us for a moment, we will consult with LCO to make sure that pardon me. Before we do that, I'm going to yield to Representative Foster, if that's all right. She might have a response for you.
thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair.
I think in all of those sections, it's linked to the statutory reference for DEEP as an agency. So every time it says commissioner, I believe that the reference is to DEEP.
I will assure you, we will look at that again, and if the reference is deemed ambiguous, we will make adjustments.
Can, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can we just double check with the LCO? Would that be-
I will do that. We stand in recess for a couple of minutes. Hang on. All right, we go back to order. It is the opinion of the LCOs that we would benefit from further clarity and that the explicit mention of the Commissioner of the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection be added to the definitions. I assure you we will get to that straight away. Anything else, Representative Mara?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. I will be a no today. I think there's more we need to dive into. Hopefully we can come to something better later, but for today, I'm a no. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Buckby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I think we're back to the bakery. I think a lot of this still needs to be flushed out better and gone over more. I think I always get very nervous too with a strike all this late in what we're looking at and how much of this has had the input of, I know the utilities aren't in love with this bill, and it brings me back to 2 years ago when we excluded the utilities from all the process of SB 7, and we didn't get, they're a big part of this relationship. This has to work collectively, and if they're as highly opposed to it, I think more has to be flushed out. I think it's a late adjustment, and it's no opinion on efforts being put forward, but I think it's not fully baked yet. And again, same reason I can't support it until we have more input from the utilities who have to be our partners through this to work through the concerns that they have as well, as they showed us with a little of the public hearing that they testified on some of these things, and some of it's all kind of bottled together. So I'm concerned about it, and I'm most certainly a no for today.
Thank you, Representative. I will disagree with your characterization of SB 7 that they were frozen out of it. It was a very big bill, went through a lot of changes. In hindsight, might have involved them earlier in the process, but it is always our intent to involve the utilities and things that affect them. And we will have conversations about that. Representative Foster.
I want to thank the chair and members of the committee for hearing this bill and engaging in the process for the last 2 years. I want to make a commitment to work bipartisanly in collaboration and finding something that moves forward. A lot of times as we are working on this committee, and I know I've used this metaphor before, but we're desperately grasping for levers that allow us to address costs. And the goal of this bill, particularly in the redraft, is to address the transmission expense lever in every way that we can. And transmission has grown 72% since 2015. And it's typically 10 to 11% of a household's monthly bill. And so this bill, I think, makes what I would call for myself a valiant effort to try and address what we can to put in more control into transmission expenditures by the EDCs. Now, what I will say is I anticipate friction with the utility companies on particularly the transmission planning components of this bill. And what I'll say is the structure of transmission planning for the utility companies is perverse. So they are provided incentives to make those significant investments. And I know that they are continuously arguing, why would we replace a wire or a pole that does not need to be replaced? But they are incentivized to replace wires and poles. Their cost infrastructure is designed where they're guaranteed this return on investment of nearly 10% for all of those investments. And so I think that sometimes you can anticipate friction, work collaboratively to make it mechanistically as functional as possible, but know that probably we're going to end up in a place here where we will be cutting into an opportunity for profit gain for utility companies. And fundamentally, I'm okay with that. And maybe not everyone is, but I think most of our ratepayers are in the state. And if that is something that makes progress moving forward, I think that should be something that we consider. And I think, we work really hard in this committee to hear from stakeholders everywhere that we can. But my fidelity, and I think the fidelity of most of us as members of the committee, and certainly hopefully of the agencies who are going to be making determinations and having oversights in this bill, their fidelity is to the ratepayers, and the utility companies' lobbyists their fidelity is to the shareholders. And so as we navigate this process with them moving forward, I think we just have to acknowledge where we might be misaligned, and that's okay. Everyone's doing their job. Hopefully we're all good people in the end, and we're all going to speak respectfully to one another as we navigate this challenging terrain. But ultimately, I'm comfortable with doing something that puts a little bit more rigorous constraints on transmission costs, because I think that's somewhere where we need to get. And also, I'm just a big fan of the wonky tech. So I think that we can get to a place where we sort of balance those things and get somewhere that's hopefully really good for Connecticut ratepayers. And I appreciate you guys flagging that we can do some more work collaboratively. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Fazio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I did want to ask of the proponent of the bill if a couple of short questions. First, if the bill, I think I can detect maybe where, but I just wanted to check with her, where and if the bill envisions avoiding federal preemption, because obviously transmission is generally federally regulated, but how this avoids preemption or gets around any federal preemption of transmission regulation.
Thank you for that question. I have to tell you, the thing that boggles me the most is navigating federal or in case law on the federal preemption. It's been a real steep learning curve for me. But where I think that we're navigating this is right now we're expanding sort of the ability of the Siting Council to do the work that it's already doing, but we're strengthening its review processes. So the Siting Council already has the ability to reject transmission projects. They already can say no, but we're just making sure that they have the specific case expertise to rigorously evaluate those materials. So we're not really giving it an additional authority. We're just expanding the expertise that exists for those for that committee, that commission as it does that work. It's not an expansion of oversight. It's more targeted, I would say.
Thank you. Back to you, Senator.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative. Was there any input or sense from PURA? I know this is S language, substitute language, but any kind of discussion or understanding from PURA how they think it could have a rate impact one way or the other?
Representative Foster.
You know what? We don't have a ratepayer impact statement, but the whole point of this bill is to have a positive impact, as in beneficial, not as in increasing cost, but a beneficial impact to the Connecticut ratepayers by constraining transmission costs.
Senator Fazio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative. I appreciate the intent. I appreciate the work on this bill. The S language is more kind of substantial and complicated than what I had expected. Today, I'm going to vote no just to flag it. I'm very happy to work to make the final product something that we can all get behind, because I do think the intention is good here and the efforts are good here. So, I'm just voting no to flag today, but I'm definitely open to to working to get the final product to something that we can all support. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator, and we look forward to working with you to get to that point. Representative Mara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for acknowledging me for the second time. I just want to kind of add into, and I appreciate Senator Fazio talking about the changes that might happen to the ratepayer. And I do believe that any bill that we move out of this committee needs to every time have a ratepayer impact. That we owe that to the citizens and the residents in Connecticut to understand what fees they are going to be put on them. We don't call it a tax, but it is an extra fee put on our residents, and it needs to be very clear when each one of us are voting for it, especially on the floor. But when each one of us are voting for it, that we know how much we are asking the citizens of Connecticut and the users of either Eversource or UI are going to have to pay for it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Foster for the second time.
And I realize I might have been unclear because I used the word positive. So the goal is that this bill will have a beneficial impact, so reduce ratepayer impact. So the goal is that this is going to save ratepayers money. That is the whole intention of this legislation, is that through leveraging technology and oversight, we have a benefit to the Connecticut ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Other comments? Representative Mashinsky.
Sometimes the investment is initially costly, and then there's a savings after the investment is paid for, and then from then on the consumer.
Speak up a little bit more, Representative Mashinsky, be closer to the mic. Thank you.
Okay, sometimes the investment initially costs the ratepayer something, but then over time, for example, if you change the wires, if you change the efficiency of the wires, there's an initial investment in the infrastructure, but then over time, the consumer saves money. So I hope we're not looking at this just short term when we're measuring what is the cost to consumer, because sometimes you have to put that efficiency equipment in there first to get the savings. So I hope we're not looking at 1 year. I hope when we're talking about the ratepayer, I hope we're looking at the investment and then the savings out into the future for the ratepayer.
Thank you, Representative. I think we all desire that we keep our eye on the benefits of improving technology all the time. And certainly, I think that with our needs in the Northeast, we will be talking about GETS for the foreseeable future, because it will be just one component in our efforts to secure sufficient energy and bring down rates. Senator Needleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to acknowledge Representative Foster's amazing work on this. If energy policy is wonky, this is the wonky part of wonky. It's wonky squared. And I think that the skill set that you bring, analytical ability, and the desire to dig deep shows itself on something like this initiative. And yes, where the line between transmission and the state and federal regulatory framework lies is certainly a critical point here. It was not that long ago that FERC gave or asked in-state regulators to participate a little bit more in the process of regulating in-state transmission lines, or at least having some sense of what's going on here, because it can be, I'm not saying it is, but it can be a black hole of cost with a higher rate of return than normal capital work in the state. And just to elucidate the process at FERC, you come up with a plan. They have a limited number of staff there. They approve your plan, but it's not really a rate case method that's done at FERC. So they approve your plan, and then a lot of stuff gets dumped into it. And it's very, very hard to oversee. I have to say that transmission has gone up significantly. I forget, Commissioner Dykes gave us a percentage not that long ago. It's broken out as one bucket on the bill. if you go back to 2017, I think it's probably 50% higher than it was back then. And it's exceeded the rate of inflation by quite a bit. Doesn't mean that a lot of the work didn't need to get done. So I don't want to disparage anybody here, but it's hard to control electric rates when we have, one, a deregulated market on supply, and two, transmission that is federally regulated. And then we have the small bucket of normally smaller bucket of public benefits, which are 40-something items that seem to be the focus of the whole session. And then the distribution rate, which is regulated. I do want to address something that the good representative on my right said, not this good representative, that good representative, Representative Mara, about knowing what the cost is before we vote on something. In some cases, that's just not possible. You know, for example, Millstone was done as a procurement at a fixed price, and the impact to the ratepayers is adjudicated in intervals, sometimes plus, sometimes minus, but you can't know at the moment that you approve that what the cost impact is going to be. The same would be true if we procured natural gas. We wouldn't know if we made the decision to procure, 1,000 megawatts of natural gas at a fixed price, because that's the certainty sometimes that developers require in order to make capital investments on the supply side. We wouldn't know what the impact of that is, because we're going to be paying based on the difference between that number and the market at the time. So I just want to be clear that although I agree, it would be nice to know what the impact was going to be. In more cases than not, much of that impact is a very variable number. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. You do raise a good point. I think it's the desire of every member of this committee, as well as the legislature more broadly, to do everything within our power to bring down rates. But we often face conundrums where sometimes we need to make investments in order to bring them down in the longer term. And it makes it very complicated to figure out sometimes cost benefit. So I think this is going to be part of our consideration frame going forward for the foreseeable future. And we take Representative Mara's point to heart, that we want to keep that in mind as we have our debates. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, Madam Clerk, let's have a roll call vote.
This is a roll call vote. Mr. JFS to the floor, House Bill 7017, with LCO 6647.
Your voice got very low, Mr. Clerk.
Did that all come through? Do you want me to repeat that?
I think you're good.
Senator Needleman,
Yes.
Representative Steinberg,
Yes.
Senator Fazio,
No.
Representative Mara,
Mara votes no.
Representative Sanchez. Senator Maroney,
Senator Maroney votes yes.
Representative Ali Brennan,
Representative Ali Brennan votes yes.
Senator Cabrera, Representative D'Amico,
D'Amico votes yes.
Representative Gresco. Yeah. What was that, Representative Gresco? Oh, excellent. Representative Horn. Senator Marr,
Senator Marr votes yes.
Senator McCrory, Representative Mushinski,
Mushinski, yes.
Representative Piscopo,
No.
Representative Yacarino, Representative Buxbaum, Representative Constantine,
Representative Constantine votes yes.
Representative Buckby,
No.
Representative Foster,
Foster votes yes.
Representative Jensen,
No.
Representative Canino, Representative Winter,
Yes.
Representative Gauthier, Representative Hughes.
Hughes votes yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Again, we will be holding votes open till 2 p.m. today. We now move to item 7 on today's agenda, House Bill 7087, an act concerning shared clean energy subscriptions. This is a JFS to the floor, LCO 6577. Do I have a motion? Moved by Representative Winter. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded by Representative Hughes. You will note that this version of our shared clean energy subscriptions bill is significantly different than we originally put forward. It is now geared to be a pilot to give us some real world experience here in the state. As many committee members are aware, we have asked PURA to evaluate all our solar incentive systems, including the SCEF program, which may have got off to a slow start, but is beginning to gain some traction. This is intended to take us to a different level, to contemplate bringing in players that can truly move the needle on renewable energy. And even though we've made a significant shift to this current version and its pilot, it's still something we're going to have conversations about. It's very important that we get the agreement of the agencies. They're on board with taking on such a program. But I think it signifies how important it is to us that we take advantage of all the tools in our toolbox to expand supply. And there's a prospect of bringing in players who are currently not doing business in Connecticut to actually do so to the benefit of everyone here, which might ultimately also not only increase supply, but drive down rates for renewable energy. So I'm open to comments or questions on this. Representative Buckby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have to say, following the last bill, the discussion of cost, this one scares the bejeepers out of me. This is possible increase on cost for our ratepayers. This bill needs to be flushed out. I'm floored that we're looking at this bill in this session when we're looking about ratepayer costs, that this could really drive it up. I think that a lot of what could be done could be toward the end of this bill in the third section, that we can talk to PURA. And I'm a little, this is one that threw me on the whole day. This bill, to look at it and go, this could bring considerable cost to the ratepayer down the road. I have to say that some of this was all of this even discussed in a public hearing? That's a concern. But secondly, it's giving a whole lot more to the Green Bank again. We seem to be doing our best as a state to push everything we can to the Green Bank to do all this work for us. And I'm concerned with the intent of that. So with that, I'm certainly going to be a no on this bill with hopes and dreams that something can be changed with this, because this is terrifying to me.
I got the sense you wouldn't be supportive. Certainly, I again disagree with your characterization that this is bound to increase rates. It's certainly not the intent. And I think once again, we're trying to balance impact on ratepayers with the need to assure more energy. It's part of the all of the above strategy in some ways, and we're trying to prepare ourselves to having greater demand and being prepared for that. Senator Fazio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time. I want to ask maybe the chairman or any other proponent of the bill. Obviously, we have existing programs to provide to do procurements of solar and other renewables at above market rates. Specifically, we have the SCEF program. We have the NRES and RRES programs. We have other legacy programs which are still online. And then I think the new solar procurements that were done a couple months ago by deep in the administration, specifically the ones out of Maine, I think were done under a separate authority. So there's a lot of different programs and authorities to do direct and subsidized procurements of solar and other renewable energy. I'm wondering if this bill, confirming this bill, envisions a new program, a new authority that's on top of those existing ones.
Great question, Senator. Indeed, the concept of doing a pilot at this time is to provide the legislature and the agencies with more information on how we might upgrade our existing shared clean energy programs. We will be getting feedback from PURA as of January of next year. We felt that the pilot would facilitate talking about the future of shared clean energy and might help us actually sort out our programs to some degree. The intent of asking PURA to look at SCEF as well as NRES and RES was to acknowledge after a period of years that we have a lot of experience and it's time now to relook at those programs with fresh eyes. That's what we expect PURA to do. We want to provide them with as much quality information as possible to have them come back to us with recommendations on how we might tweak or change the programs. That is our goal. I believe this bill will further that objective. And even if it is not fully fleshed out now, we'll be working directly with PURA to make sure that this is in conformance with what their expectations are. And it will move forward only with their approval. And regardless, this conversation has been critically important as we have plans to upgrade the SCEF program in the future. So we beg your indulgence for now. And this is really a cornerstone of us upping our game when it comes to solar and is worth contemplating. Are there other questions or comments?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I did want to continue.
Please continue, Senator.
Sorry. So it is on top of the existing programs. Normally, when I think of a pilot program, I think of something that's small and experimental, but my reading of this is that the pilot program could have a total nameplate capacity of up to 600 megawatts, which is over 10%, well over maybe 12% of the entire nameplate capacity of energy generation in Connecticut. So, when I think of a pilot program, I think of something that's small and experimental and doesn't have a substantial economic impact. But I'm reading this and it says up to 600 megawatts. How is that thought through in the legislation?
That's a great question. I think that it underscores the importance of us finding ways to enhance our solar supply, which goes beyond just adding that to rooftops or to small businesses. Only when we can contemplate the prospect of larger grid scale projects that we're actually going to move the needle on solar. The magnitude of the potential, not that we would necessarily fully subscribe that, is an indication of our desire to significantly amplify the role of solar in the state as we approach, potentially a supply crisis. This is the time to move forward with something a bit more bold. And if we're not 100% comfortable with that kind of broad potential capacity, something we can look at again.
Well, I appreciate the willingness to look at that. I'm a no on the legislation today. Again, we have several procurement authorities that are already existing. This, while it's termed a pilot, I'm reading it as something that would be pretty substantial on top of it. Again, for the public, some of these existing solar procurements are up to $330 dollars per megawatt hour. For RES, $15 to $18, $150 to $180 per megawatt hour for the NRES program, and $80 to $90 to $100 for the SCEF program. So I do share sympathies that we want to see maybe a migration of some of our megawatts from things that are very smaller scale and don't have economies of scale, like RES, which are $330, to more SCEF type programs, which are less and have better economics. So I'm sympathetic to that, changing resources because it'll have a beneficial impact to ratepayers. It'll reduce rates. It'll reduce public benefits all in without affecting how many megawatts we do. But as I read this would be on top of existing subsidies, and so it would have the effect of increasing rates, and it's not small enough that I really think of it as a pilot program. So that's the reason why I would be a no on this bill as of right now.
Thank you, Senator. We take your point. We'll look at the overlap of any subsidies as we finalize this bill. I'm also hopeful in that the kind of solar developers that we seek to attract are doing business in other states, and I do believe some of the cost parameters are substantially lower than you describe, and that is indeed our hope. And one of the things that we would seek to discover in the pilot is that will it actually have a positive impact on the cost of solar for ratepayers here in the state. Other comments or questions? Senator Marr, followed by Representative Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a informational piece of comment. This morning I was at a Green Bank presentation of awards for this past year. And I think it's worth everyone knowing about the specific installation that took place in my district last year at the Meadow Ridge Senior Living Facility. And that solar array is going to result in $7.5 million worth of savings over the course of this particular installation. And that kind of savings is what the people of Connecticut need. So I will be a yes on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for pointing out that great project that was, I understand, really championed by people actually at the facility. It's a great story, and it goes to show that we can be very creative in ways in which we can take advantage of solar in the state. You got something further, Senator?
Yes, I apologize. I should have pointed out that this was championed by Susan Oslander, who just turned 91, and she was relentless in her efforts to make this happen.
Well, we acknowledge her and offer her a happy birthday as well. And to the point that Senator Fazio raised and you alluded to, we indicate, at least potentially, that the Green Bank have oversight over this. And I think it's really important to note that we often turn to the Green Bank to help us with getting programs off the ground, because frankly, they do such a good job of it. And that we've given them a variety of opportunities, and they have created products around them to achieve those ends. And it just seems logical with the scale of this project and the financial implications that the Green Bank would be an appropriate partner in this. We've had initial conversations, but that will be ongoing. Representative Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to speak to this bill as an opportunity to broaden access to renewable energy. I think we've had a lot of discussion over the last couple of months about how programs may serve some segments of ratepayers, but not others. And I think one thing that comes up repeatedly in my district is someone who says, oh, I'd love to go solar, but my neighbor has a big tree, or the city has a big tree, or I have a roof that wouldn't support panels enough that it's economically viable. And so I think this bill allows us to adopt a model that's been very helpful in other states in terms of expanding access to the bill saving benefits that Senator Marr mentioned, that many other ratepayers are realizing. And that can also reduce need for additional transmission, distribution, generation capacity on the whole grid. And I also think it opens up a pathway for more dollars, private dollars, to help support that investment in a centralized way that can help lower the cost of providing a larger scale array. So you can have many individual subscribers to one large array, rather than, as was mentioned earlier, the RRES rates are much higher since we're doing many smaller projects. So I do think that if we can resolve the subsidy overlap issue, there's also a net benefit in terms of system savings. Thank
you, Representative. And as we're all having this conversation, we know there are a number of members of this committee who are frustrated that we haven't had more conversation about solar this session. I will assure you that that is a coming attraction for next year, so everybody hang around. When we hear back from Pura, we'll be having a very big conversation about enhancing solar next year. Representative Mara.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I too was assured we were going to be talking about solar next year. So I was a little surprised to see this bill become so broad before us today. And I share the concerns with my colleagues that this seems to have grown outside of the pilot program, which like we have talked, I know we are going to be discussing solar next year. And if we're going to be dealing with something with this magnitude, I believe that this needs to be dealt with when we deal holistically with solar. I certainly appreciate my colleague across the aisle here mentioning the 7 million benefit that may be coming from solar, but we're looking at hundreds of millions that the cost may be on this. And we don't exactly know what that is. So I think that's, as I've mentioned before, anytime we move forward with bills, we need to be very sure what the effects on our ratepayers are. So with that, Mr. Chair, I would, the clerk has an amendment. Would you please ask the clerk to distribute the amendment and I be allowed to summarize?
Please proceed. The clerk can forward the amendment to all parties. Madam Clerk, has the amendment been forwarded? It's sent. All right, we're just waiting on it. We'll just be in recess for a couple more minutes while we give everybody an opportunity to take a look at it. Okay, given that it's very brief, I think that we've all assimilated it. If you'd like to continue, Representative Mara.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. This amendment to 7087 strikes everything after the enacting clause and substitutes the following in lieu. On or before July 1st, 2025, the chair of PURA shall initiate a docket to study the ratepayer impact of shared clean energy subscriptions. No later than February 1st, 2026, PURA shall report its findings to the committee, having cognizance over the matters of energy and technology. Mr. Chair, I move adoption of this amendment, and when the vote be taken, I ask that it be taken by roll.
Thank you, Representative. Do I have it's been moved? Has it been seconded? Representative Buckby is seconded. We will open a discussion. Representative Mara, if you'd like to take the lead.
Yes. Thank you so much. As I think anything that we do in this committee, we need to be doing very thoughtfully when we talk about our ratepayers. When we talk about benefits to the ratepayer, we need to understand whether this is financial benefits or whether this is clean energy benefit. And the ratepayer needs to understand when we're voting on something that we have these numbers in front of us. If you look back at so many of our bills that we have passed here, this has added significant cost to our ratepayers' bills, and we do it often. 2005, 2011, 2013, 2015, 2017, 2018. I've got a few more down here. I think there's a 20 and a 22. Point being that we have hundreds of millions of dollars that we put on our ratepayers' bills. We need to be cognizant of that. We talk all the time about what the cost to the state is when we move bills forward, but we don't often think of those costs when they go straight to ratepayers. And now I believe that's one of the reasons why we are seeing our ratepayers really screaming at us that they want help with their bill. So anything we move out of this committee, we need to have the numbers in front of us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Buckby, followed by Representative Mushinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the good ranking members' efforts on this. This one, if we think about it, we are supposed to be financially somewhat responsible with people's money. I mean, seeing the good chair of finance walking in the door kind of makes me think of that as well. And I think it's really something important that we can do here. Again, I brought something up last week that we could do right away. This is something that we can do now without legislation. This can be a phone call to Pura, ask them to open the docket and get us the proper numbers so that we know exactly what we're looking at for next year. If next year is the solar year, as a good chair just mentioned, let's do our homework. This is doing our homework, as opposed to arguing back and forth about how much it's going to save and how much it's going to cost. Let's go to the people who know the answer. Let's go to Pura, say, hey, open the docket. Let's get this done. That's not full legislation. That's, as we mentioned the other day, it's a phone call, a text, an email. Let's get that docket opened up so we can get the proper information on what this is. And then let's vote on it next year when it makes more sense. To me, that's just a responsible way to approach it fiscally. And this is what our people are begging us to do. Stop trying to solve all the problems before you have the answers to some of that you can move forward with. It's just simply responsibility. And we need to step up and take responsibility for our actions. So to me, I think this is a great amendment for us to pump the brakes, say, look, this is what we need to know before we can make that step. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Mushinski.
Thank you. I'm reading fast as I can, but in lines 194 to 195, there is language here about one of the purposes of this report is to get the impacts of the pilot program on energy costs, reliability, and equitable cost allocation for ratepayers. So it is in here already. And then in lines 195 to 200, participation by low and moderate income retail electric customers. So this amendment already has the ratepayer covered, including the low and moderate income ratepayer. And it also has other tasks beyond that. So we have covered that concern in the amendment. I mean, in the, in the JFS language. And we don't need to strike the rest of this study just to get focus only on the ratepayer costs. It's already included in this JFS. So we should keep the JFS and reject the amendment.
Thank you, Representative Mushinski, for that interpretation. I will add that we have asked Pura to look at the SCEF program and whether or not it is explicit in the bill that we passed previously. I'm certain that we can have a conversation with Pura and make sure that ratepayer impacts are part of that consideration without having to pass additional legislation. Representative Mara for the second time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. If you don't mind, I just would like to comment on Representative Mushinski's comment. Yes, I did see that in there. Unfortunately, that is after the pilot program is already enacted. So this is kind of putting the cart before the horse. I would like to understand the financial impact before we implement the pilot program. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that clarification, Representative. I think this, I would concur with Senator Needleman's comments that it's very challenging sometimes to do those kind of analyses in advance, as much as we might desire that. If this becomes the standard for moving any legislation to this committee, it could be truly confounding. So I'm going to recommend that members of this committee, with all the good intentions, vote against this amendment, that we can accomplish its ends through other means. And that certainly if we're going to be changing the nature of policy in the state to be driven exclusively by ratepayer rates, we will create new problems for ourselves. Other comments or questions? If not, we are ready for a roll call vote. Once again, I just want to reiterate, as chair, I'm recommending that members vote against this amendment. Madam Clerk.
This is a roll call vote on Amendment A. Senator Needleman,
Senator Needleman votes against the amendment.
Representative Steinberg,
No.
Senator Fazio,
Yes.
Representative Mara,
Mara votes yes.
Representative Sanchez, Senator Maroney,
Senator Maroney votes no.
Representative Ali Brennan,
Ali Brennan votes no.
Senator Cabrera,
Senator Cabrera votes no.
Representative D'Amico,
D'Amico votes no.
Representative Gresco,
No.
Representative Horn,
Horn votes no.
Senator Marr,
Senator Marr votes no.
Senator McCrory,
Senator McCoy is a no.
Representative Mushinski,
Shinsky, no.
Representative Piscopo,
Piscopo, yes.
Representative Yakarino,
Representative Yakarino votes yes for the amendment.
Representative Bucksbaum,
Bucksbaum votes yes.
Representative Constantine,
No.
Representative Buckby,
Yes.
Representative Foster, Representative Jensen,
Yes.
Representative Canino, Representative Winter,
No.
Representative Gothier,
Representative Gothier, no.
and Representative Hughes.
Hughes votes no.
Madam Clerk, you might want to check again with those who were unable to answer the first go around.
Representative Sanchez, Representative Foster, and Representative Canino.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please let us know when you've completed the tally.
Tally is 7 yay, 15 nay, 3 absent and not voting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The motion for the amendment fails. We are back to the underlying bill. Are there further comments or questions? Representative Mara.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I'm really disappointed that that amendment failed. I think that that should be standard operating procedure for us here in this committee to seek to understand what the financial implications of these bills before we move them out. And I do realize that sometimes it is hard to find out what programs are going to cost, but I've had some initial estimates that we're somewhere between 200 and 300 million a year on this program, which everyone should know as you and that's, that would be just Eversource's portion. So everyone here should know that that's going to add somewhere between $11 and $15 per month on your residents. So when you vote yes on this, please understand that you are voting yes to have your ratepayers' bills go up without the understanding of the benefits of this program before we move it out. I'm not against this program. I think this could be a really great thing, but I want to understand the benefits before we move it out of committee. I would have liked to have had some input from Green Bank. They weren't in this initial bill, so we don't know what they think about this bill because they didn't have a chance to testify. So I do appreciate this bill. It could have a lot of great things in it, but I don't think it's been fully vetted. So today I will be a no. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Representative, as I said previously, we have had initial conversations with the Green Bank. On the face of it, they seem amenable, but obviously those conversations need to continue. We'd be glad to involve you with them as we move forward. As for throwing out numbers about what the impacts are, I think this is indicative of how challenging it is for us to put numbers on things in advance. And we certainly do not intend to alarm people that we're about to introduce something that's going to have a huge impact on ratepayers until we have a chance to flesh it out further. Senator Needleman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And with regard to the comments about specific numbers, I'm not sure where we could get those numbers from right now because we don't know. We actually don't know what the cost would be. That's a sort of a random number, in my opinion. It might be, it might not be, it might be more, it might be considerably less. But I just want to say we're sort of dealing with goals and desires that would allow for more renewables on the grid, for sure. Clearly, all indications are that well-built grid-scale solar may actually be the least expensive type of new generation that you can put on the grid now. And I say that with the caveat that we don't do all rooftop. There are some things that I know will cost more money, but grid-scale solar has to be compared with new generation of other types of generation. And because we haven't built a natural gas power plant, which seems to be the rage, or we haven't built a small modular reactor, which is another one of the rages. We're living in the world of what we know. And we don't know what the cost of building a new natural gas plant would be with the inherent pipeline costs, which would be quite astronomical, unless, of course, Washington chooses to pay for them, which I doubt they will do. I think that the normal process is somebody has to build the pipeline with dollars. They will not do it without a commitment. The power plant has to be built with dollars in an unregulated market. If ISO needed new power on the grid, we would find out, but they haven't done a procurement for new energy in quite a while. So we are guessing. And then I have to remind everybody that we're certainly dealing with the very tangible cost of building new generation, be it renewable or not renewable. But we're also dealing when we know what fossil fuel generation does. Forget about climate change for a minute, because that's a very unknowable number. But we know about air quality. We know that there are intangible aspects of putting out bad generation on the grid. We know the impact of coal. We know the impact of oil. We know about the increase in asthma and other respiratory conditions from bad generation. We also know that in this pursuit of all things, and I'm all for all things. I think I was for all things before it became a popular discussion. All things, if that path leads us to more natural gas, what that does do is it makes us way more vulnerable to a commodity that is a global commodity that we have very little control over. Remember, we're talking about all of the impact from the beginning of the war in Ukraine because supplies of natural gas got very constrained. Prices spiked to 24 cents per kilowatt hour because natural gas is a global commodity. It's not something you can control. It's not something that anybody in this country or any one company would have the ability to control. It's a free market for commodities. One thing I will say about renewables is once you build them, you don't pay for the wind and you don't pay for the sun. You don't pay for hydropower. You don't pay for the water. The wind and the sun and the water may be a little less likely to be there because we have had droughts, which I know some people don't think are caused by climate change. I kind of believe that the variability in the weather is, but that's just my educated opinion. What I do know is that the wind is free and the sun is free, and you build it and you benefit from it, and it stabilizes the cost of generation in a way that commodities that you dig, drill, or mine do not stabilize. They are variable. They are globally sold. So I think that a grid of the future, I have not been the guy who said natural gas will be phased out by tomorrow or the next day, or maybe even by 2050. But I also believe that we need a mix of energy sources, not only chasing cheap, which we all would love to do, but chasing stability. Because what has really caused a lot of our problems, and this variable bar graph, which is not what we should be looking at. We should be looking at the total cost per kilowatt hour. The bar graph is going to keep moving, but the graph per kilowatt hour spiked because of the war in Ukraine mostly. That's just the reality. Now, will it stabilize? Will it come down a bit? It will. It goes up faster than it takes to come down. But we should be talking about a holistic, futuristic approach. I know it's politically the opportune moment to talk about the public benefits and that cost impact on the bill. We know that a substantial amount of that is energy procurement, some going back to 2005. And maybe the discussion, because I believe that I've had this conversation with other people, maybe the discussion is we shouldn't do any procurements. Let the market work. But the market will not work to improve people's air quality, will not improve health outcomes, will not do what many people in this state, frankly, the majority, feel that we should be doing to mitigate climate change. Do we go too far? Sometimes. Do we not go far enough? Sometimes. But the majority of people support the policies that we put forward. And we work to refine them. We work together. I wouldn't want to go back into the records on all of those bills that the good representative cited. I would go back to 2005 with the natural gas peaker plants, which we were told we needed, all the way through any new procurements. This bill is an effort to find the most cost-efficient way to do that, if it's possible. It may be a reach. It may not necessarily result in the cheapest price at the wholesale level for energy because of the way ISO works. And again, deregulation, the ISO markets, how they procure energy are part of the complication of what we have to deal with every day when we try to set policy in this state. We know that it's a different political climate, but Connecticut has to stay true to its values. We have to stay true to our values. We care about air quality. We care about the environment. We care about people. We work overtime to protect those people that need the protection. That is the low-income discount rate. That is the hardship rates that we have, the plans that we have to help people, because we understand that we are at the end of the pipeline. We understand that New England's rates are going to be higher than Texas's rates for a lot of reasons. But we work as best as we can to make sure that whether it's individuals at the high and low income of the spectrum and businesses like mine that are high energy users get the best opportunities they can to buy the energy that they want, but also to participate in as much energy efficiency as we are willing to make available to them. Because we create the programs that provide energy efficiency dollars. I know my business, I was told not to talk about how much my electric bill is, but let it suffice to say it's a lot. And I don't mean my personal. I have a business here that's very energy intensive. I work hard. We buy motors that have soft starts. We buy things to mitigate our costs. And we sometimes get some benefits from the programs that are out there. These are things that are important. Solar is underutilized in Connecticut. I personally have my doubts about where we can put this stuff without spending a lot of money. on the grid, but I drove to Portsmouth, Rhode Island the other day. And, you know, you have to go up to Providence and go down 195 to get there. It was my grandson's basketball tournament. They did not win, but they played excellent. I will say that. Very proud of my grandson. He had 5 3-pointers in one game. And the other team looked like they were high school seniors. He's in 5th grade. In any case, I saw large-scale solar array after large-scale solar array, and we all know that the bigger the solar array, the more efficient and lower cost it's going to be. I saw land-based windmills, which I was really surprised about. I thought there was like 1 or 2. There were at least a dozen, I think, that I saw. They generate electricity. These are things we should continue to look at. We understand some things are out of favor, some things are in favor in Washington, but because of that, I support continuing, not in an unrestrained way, but looking at what's in the best interest of the state of Connecticut and all the ratepayers, and not be focused necessarily on the political moment, because energy policy is a 20-year horizon and politics comes and goes on an issue. We have to stick to what we believe in and what we think is the right path for the residents of the state. So with that, I urge that we vote yes on the bill.
Thank you for that succinct analysis. I concur.
I can go on.
Moving along. Representative Buckby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and that's quite a bit to follow up, but there's I have some comments to that to follow up, but also first question out of the gate, really, did Pura submit any testimony on how they feel about this bill?
Yeah, given the fact that it has changed dramatically, I don't think Pura has had an opportunity yet to comment on the bill as it's currently constructed.
I would be concerned about that. I think their input would be critical for this bill going forward. I think that's their importance in there. Aside from that, just a few things that the good chair had just mentioned in the very short version. I think one of the big pieces you said was chasing cheap, Mr. Chair. That's what the people want us to do. They want us to chase cheap right now. We have costs that are through the roof. So these people who cannot afford to put a heat pump in their house because they're paying so much money in the public benefits charge, they can't save the money to get there. The people are screaming to us to help them, and none of this hits quickly enough to help any of the people. And the good chair mentioned that some of this may be political. I would say the other side of that. I would say politics has gotten in the way of the policy in this building over the last 10, 15 years, to which people have to pay for. I mentioned in one of the hearings that, you know, maybe people should be able to opt out. If you're part of the 30 to 40% of this state that rents, you should be able to opt out of programs. And Mr. Chair, you're the one who mentioned to me that would be like, I don't want to pay for the taxes on that road, because it's taxes again. And that's what this is. These are additional taxes that people are paying for. Renters cannot afford to pay for something that they cannot use. And the good Senate chair mentioned a great point, that your business, your massive business, uses a lot of energy, has taken advantage of some of the programs, as well you should. But in that same breath, who's paying for those programs? Some of these aren't your low-income housing, they're the middle-income people. People that want to be able to do stuff for their house that can't. I'm sure every one of you has been stopped every day about someone upset about their energy bill, be it public benefits charge or what it is. It is every single day. They're coming to us saying, what are you doing to us? We can't afford to do it. We can't afford this. So that's a huge piece. And let's see, I had 2 other notes here. Aside from solar being 2% of what we're looking at about the energy in this state, I'm all for expanding that, but we have to do it economically, and we're not doing that. We're showing that repeatedly. Last thing I want to say is the good chair also mentioned all things, taking in all things. This committee has taken in all things except one this session that I hope, pray, that goes through before we get into session. And that is not one amendment or bill from this side of the aisle. There's been nothing. And if we want to say things are political, that's a shining beacon of being a political concern that personally I have, and I'm sure plenty of people on this side have. If we're going to be a bipartisan committee and work together, we have to exchange those ideas and work together, not just put forth one side because we have all the votes and we can do what we want to do. I think that arrogance and intelligence should not be confused in this fight, and we have to fight this for the people of all of our districts, not just one side of a party from each district. We need to work together to bring this cost down. None of this does. And I apologize for my diatribe, but it's gotten beyond frustrating for us to hear this every day. And the consumer is right. We need to do something by the consumer. This doesn't do it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Buckby, and we appreciate your passion for this. You know, we are all extremely sensitive to the impact of increased rates have had on consumers, and will remain a critical component of any debate or decision we make. I would submit, though, that as we had said at the very beginning of this committee's deliberations this session, that balance is critically important as well. And I think Senator Nealman brought up the salient point, which is as important as affordability is, it is not the only consideration. We have to consider the long term. I would say that citizens of the state of Connecticut expect us to be as well informed as possible about the complexities of energy policy that go well beyond just the rate of the moment, and that they are counting on us to look towards our long-term future, and that we are considering other critically important factors like having adequate energy to meet our needs as we go forward in a very rapidly changing landscape, that we're making adequate investments in the grid and in the transmission network so we can bring wherever that energy is generated to us in a safe and reliable fashion. If we look at only one component of all of these worthy considerations, we are doing the people of Connecticut as a supreme disservice. And that if we allow ourselves to be swayed by the emotions, we are not doing our jobs. And I think it's critically important that we also acknowledge that when we started this session, we made it very clear that we were going to be open to all considerations. We looked at a number of things that would improve competition. We looked at a number of things that would change our procurement strategy. And yes, we considered a number of bills that were brought by the Republicans. I do know that some committee chairs would not have brought those bills forward. We thought it was critically important, given the circumstances and our desire to always consider good ideas, that we offer those bills a public hearing. We heard at extensive length from consumers and had a lot of written testimony as well. We have sought to always honor, at least through the committee hearing process, a bipartisan approach, but that is different than passing bills out of committee. And this committee has no obligation to keep count on whose side is getting which bills passed. We hope to continue to move forward with passing bills on their merits rather than where they originated. So you'll excuse me for differing on that point. Yes, Representative Mashinsky, I believe, for the second.
Yeah, I just wanted to address the costs again, because that keeps coming up. Representative Winter just sent me the release from DEEP. They just authorized 518 megawatts of new solar, and that is and 200 megawatts of new storage, energy storage. That's going to increase the state's energy supply by 3%, and it saves $424 million for ratepayers over 20 years. If you look around the U.S., you see other states, even the ones that make oil and gas, they're using solar because it brings down the cost for their grid. And when you see a fossil fuel state like Texas load up on solar, you know they're doing it because it helps the ratepayer, and it avoids those choke points on the grid when you have a really cold period or a really hot period, and you don't want your grid to fail. You don't want to buy expensive spot market fuel or go on the peaking plants, because they're a lot more expensive for supply. So what we're doing here does save money. they estimate 424 million for ratepayers in savings over 20 years. It's a good investment and we shouldn't be afraid of it. I urge us, all the committee, to support this bill.
Thank you. You just heard two widely divergent estimates about the impact on ratepayers. So it would be very challenging for us to do that in advance of such a program. Other comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you, Senator. My apologies.
All good. Again, just to clarify, the estimates that we get from DEEP are against a, how do I say it? Contrived or estimated long-term price forecast that doesn't reflect what the current price for electricity is. These procurements are being done at orders of magnitude higher than what the competitive market is for electricity. And they have enormous cost to ratepayers that they're paying through their public benefits. This, as the good representative said, we just did procurements. We just did hundreds of megawatts of procurements for solar. I sent a letter to the administration asking what the price is. I was told I cannot know that yet. Eventually I can know that, but I can't know that yet. And given the fact that we just did hundreds of megawatts of new procurement, given the fact that I am willing to bet you anything that it's more than twice the price of the current market, competitive market for electricity, and given the fact that I can't even be told what that price is by the administration, I submit to you that creating a new program for hundreds of megawatts more is at best untimely, and at worst could cost consumers hundreds of millions more, because we know that these procurements are only necessary because they're so much higher than the market rate. If they were saving money, they wouldn't need a special government contract for the electricity they're producing. And if, the point was made that, yes, the operating expenses of solar and wind are theoretically lower, but the capital expenses are so high that they cannot compete on the competitive marketplace, that they require special government contracts and subsidies that are sometimes 8 or 9 times what the competitive market is. And yes, the grid scale solar is better because it's only probably 2 times or 2.5 times or 3 times what the market rate is. And I have argued before, we should migrate our megawatts from the smaller scale residential solar, which is 8 to 10 times the market rate, to more of the grid scale, utility scale solar, which is, 2 or 3 times the market rate. I'm good with that. But deal in reality here, those are the prices. They're costing ratepayers hundreds of millions of dollars. And I think we should be open. And I think this is part of the validity of, I think there are valid points being made by the proponents. We should be migrating more of our megawatts to more affordable forms of renewables. And I think we could work together on that. But creating a new 600 megawatt procurement program that could cost ratepayers hundreds of millions of dollars is not a wise thing to do at this point, to say the least. I'll leave my comments at that. I will be voting no today, to reiterate that, but hope we can find better solutions to make energy more affordable in the state.
Thank you, Senator. And I do appreciate your comments. And I think there is actually a fair bit of common ground in our desire to up our game when it comes to solar's contribution to our impendingly increasing energy needs. I will remind the senator that it is standard practice when a procurement is made for the state not to reveal the terms of that contract initially. Every other state operates in the same fashion. So I do assume that that information will be available at the appropriate time. Yes, Representative Gauthier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick point. In terms of subsidies and subsidization of energy, let's say in your characterization, would you say fossil fuels and the fossil fuel industry is the most heavily subsidized or among the most heavily subsidized? Thank you.
A very interesting question, posed in a very interesting way as well. I think it's a valid question to ask, which is, we tend to view subsidies for renewable energy in a vacuum rather than in consideration of the history of the use of energy in this country. For the longest time, we provided any number of incentives for the exploration and the deriving of fossil fuels. Many of those subsidies continue today, and that's not even beginning to consider the soft costs, the environmental impacts and health impacts that fossil fuels bring. We keep talking about how natural gas is so much better than oil. Well, that's some comparison. If we have choices, if we can promote choices that include renewable or zero carbon energy and reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, we are benefiting ourselves along a number of dimensions. And we're not ready to do that yet. As Senator Needleman said, we're years away from being able to relinquish our dependence on fossil fuels. And I submit there will always be a role for fossil fuels in our country, but we want to limit it for the reasons stated. Our goal is to significantly supplement our energy supply because we're going to desperately need it, and because by focusing on renewable energy, we can drive down those costs. And again, as what Senator Needleman said, we're focused very much on the initial capital costs of new generation. That will be a factor in whatever source of new generation that we seek. And the idea of building out incredibly expensive new fossil fuel pipelines share some of those same conundrums in terms of the costs that have to be shared by ratepayers and others, and may not actually pay out given the time frame necessary to pay back investments of that sort. It also applies to new nuclear generation. The capital costs up front are also huge. So we can't just look at renewable energy in a vacuum and say it's the only one responsible for the higher costs of the capital generation. We should be looking across the board. So I think the representative's point is very well taken, and we should be looking in the broader context, not merely of the current moment, but of the broader history and likely future. Anything else, Representative?
Look, just thank you very much for that additional detail and additional context. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Are there further questions or comments with regard to this interesting bill? If not, Madam Clerk, if we can initiate a roll call vote.
This is a roll call vote for item number 3, number 7 on the agenda, House Bill number 7087 to JFS to the floor with LCO number 6577. Senator Needleman,
Yes.
Representative Steinberg,
Yes.
Senator Fazio,
No.
Representative Mara,
Mara votes no.
Representative Sanchez, Senator Maroney,
Senator Maroney votes yes.
Representative Ali Brennan,
Ali Brennan votes no.
Senator Cabrera,
Senator Cabrera votes yes.
Representative D'Amico,
D'Amico votes yes.
Representative Gresco,
Yes.
Representative Horn,
Yes.
Senator Marr, Senator McCrory, Representative Mushinski,
Shinsky, yes.
Representative Piscopo,
Piscopo, no.
Representative Yakarino, Representative Bucksbaum,
No.
Representative Constantine,
Yes.
Representative Buckby,
No.
Representative Foster, Representative Jensen,
No.
Representative Canino, Representative Winter,
Yes.
Representative Gothier,
Yes.
and Representative Hughes.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Given that it's now past 1 o'clock, we've agreed to extend the vote until 3 p.m. this afternoon, just to give our colleagues sufficient opportunity to weigh in on this legislation. I think it's probably time for us to go to the consent calendar and get that completed before we get to the last bill for referral. Just to review, we're looking at items 2, 3, and 4, Senate Bill 1290, Senate Bill 1292, and Senate Bill 1353. Madam Clerk, just reiterate that, and I think we're ready for a roll call on the consent calendar.
This is a roll call vote for our consent calendar, which includes number 2, Senate Bill 1290 to JF to the floor. Number 3, Senate Bill 1292 to JFS to the floor with LCO number 6656. And number 4, Senate Bill 1353 to JFS to the Finance Committee with LCO number 6641. Senator Needleman,
Yes.
Representative Steinberg,
Yes.
Senator Fazio,
Yes.
Representative Mara,
Mara votes yes.
Representative Sanchez, Senator Maroney,
Senator Maroney votes yes.
Representative Ali Brennan, Senator Cabrera,
Yes.
Representative D'Amico,
D'Amico votes yes.
Representative Gresco,
Yes.
Representative Horn,
Yes.
Senator Marr, Senator McCrory, Representative Mushinski,
Yes.
Representative Piscopo,
Yes.
Representative Yakarino, Representative Bucksbaum,
Yes.
Representative Constantine,
Yes.
Representative Bucksbaum, Representative Buckby,
Wow, yes.
Representative Foster, Representative Jensen,
Yes.
Representative Canino, Representative Winter,
Yes.
Representative Gauthier,
Yes.
and Representative Hughes.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
You, Madam Clerk. We have one item left on our agenda for today. That's House Bill 6926, an act concerning funding for the Residential Energy Preparation Services Program. This is a referral to the Appropriations Committee for self-evident reasons that they will have to weigh in on the funding as per the title. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Representative Mara. We have a second. Seconded by Representative Winter. This is a bill we discussed in committee that would seek ongoing funding for the Residential Energy Preparation Services Program. As some may recall, this was initially funded by federal dollars, which are due to expire, yet the program has had a positive impact to our knowledge. We'd like the Appropriations Committee to consider finding a way to fund this modest amount given its benefit. And I urge its approval. Are there comments or questions? If not, I think we're ready for a roll call vote, Madam. I'm sorry, what? What's that? I've just been informed we're allowed to do a voice vote. And we haven't used our voices enough today. So everybody get their outdoor voices used. Yeah, and I will we will vote to refer this bill to the Appropriations Committee. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by saying nay. Any abstaining or passing? Seeing none, it's my estimation that the motion carries and this bill will be referred. Again, we're holding votes open to 3 p.m. The last item on our agenda is to talk about the time and date of the next meeting, which may be hard to do in that we have no such meeting scheduled, which does bring me to the opportunity to say that if this is our last get together, there could always be referred bills. I want to, and I know my co-chair will want to comment as well as the rankings. We want to thank everybody on this committee for their hard work and for their patience and flexibility as we move a number of bills that are works in process forward. And we will continue to engage the committee in all that. It has been a very challenging session. We had one long, very long hearing. We've had some bills that were inherently controversial. We've had some back and forth. But I want to thank particularly our rankings and our loyal opposition for their understanding as we move these bills forward. I think it has been a productive process. Equally importantly, the unsung heroes of this committee are our staff. The Energy and Technology Committee faces many challenges, including very tight deadlines and a lot of changes in a short period of time. I'd like to take this moment to acknowledge members of our staff, starting with the long-suffering LCO, Jonathan Porzek, who not only has had to deal with all these changes, he had to go by John for most of the session because I got to be the Jonathan. We will now restore you to your full status. Thank you, Jonathan. I also want to thank our OFA representative, Sarah Bourne. I want to thank our OLR experts who are always so diplomatic in telling us what we can and can't do, and certainly doing the research on these things. Mary Fitzpatrick and Jessica Schaefer-Helmecki. And then also want to acknowledge our policy experts representing the 4 caucuses. Kimmy Grove from House Democrats, Ashley Reading from Senate Democrats, Bill Baccaro from Senate Democrats, Christopher Zavignin from Senate Republicans, and Andrew Droney from House Republicans. Next, moving to our clerks who have done such an amazing job. You may have contrast us with some of how some of the other committees have operated. This committee has been smooth. We have not had some of the issues other committees have had. And to that, I want to acknowledge the critical role of Abby Lockwood, our clerk, as well as our assistant clerks, Sierra Smith and Ashton Foley. And lastly, as has been alluded to earlier, we have some amazing aides. Nate Spencer, who will get his just due later in the day, and Gina Block, who worked with Senator Needleman, Rosalie Filippone, who is my aide, Eddie Aledia, who is Senator Fazia's aide, and Dorothy Jetsi, who is Representative Mara's aide. All these people contribute to the product you see here. It's not legislators just gallivanting on their own. We do plenty of that anyway. It's also the support we receive and the hard work of so many people that lead to laws that will affect everybody here in the state of Connecticut. And to all the people who have been involved with this, I want to offer my heartfelt thanks and for your work to date and for your continued work as we work through this session. I'm sure Senator Needleman would like to comment as well.
Yes, I also want to thank the rankings and all the people on the committee for a civil and good conversation on issues that sometimes we disagree on. But I especially want to thank my co-chair, who I think we've developed a good working relationship and a friendship. And I think that it can, I feel it, and it's made my life a lot easier this year.
Thank you. I'm beginning to liken us though to this characters from the Muppets, the 2 guys who sit in the box with the, you know, what are their names?
You can see that, right?
Yeah, we'll get to that point. I will open it up to any other comments from members of the committee. Senator Fazia.
I also wanted to thank my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for working hard on this committee the last couple of months. So we still have a lot of work to do, but I do enjoy working with the people on this committee. I want to congratulate my co-ranking member, Representative Mara, on a excellent first session as not only the ranking member on this committee, but a member on this committee and a ranking member anywhere. I think she's really, shown her capabilities as a ranking member and a leader and made a positive contribution. I want to thank the chairs. It's always good working with them. I want to thank our staff, Andrew and the House Republicans, Chris Zavignin, the great researcher we have in the Senate Republicans, my aide Eddie, all of the nonpartisan staff, the clerks, the OLR, and the LCO, all have done such a great job and been very cooperative and helpful to all of us. this year. So it was great working with everyone. Thanks to everyone for their contribution. And look forward to the months ahead where we still have a lot of work to do.
You, Senator, I will concur with your opinion of Representative Mara. She is formidable and has added a lot of value to our committee this year. Representative Mara?
Thank you so much. I'm so happy I asked for a Tuesday, Thursday committee. This has been a lot of fun, and everyone here is a pleasure to work with. I thank you to the chairs for bringing me into the conversations. I very much appreciate you all working with me and breaking things down, and always having me at the table during these discussions. Across the aisle, I have felt like I could ask any of you all questions, and many of you I have, but I think that's much to be said about this committee, because there's just a lot of room to work. And of course, my own caucus, Representative Buckby has been by me during most meetings, and as past ranking, I certainly appreciate that. And everybody, we've got new members here, so it's fun getting everybody up to speed, and it's always a pleasure to work with Senator Fazio. So thank you all very much. I look forward to us continuing this relationship and these discussions as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We really do appreciate it, and we will talk more. So on behalf of Senator Waldorf, and I'm Representative Statler, I was provided that information. We want to thank everyone for their contribution, and we stand in recess till 3 p.m. Thank you all.
Hi, Senator Maroney.
Hey, Abby, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks. I have to see, did I miss any votes? I think I might have missed a few.
Yes. So we need from you number 1 on the agenda, which was 1194.
Okay, Senator Maroney votes yes.
You got you for the consent. That is it. You're
Okay,
all set.
awesome. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, you too.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Hey, Abby.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Okay,
I think I've got a few.
so starting with number one, that was 1194.
I'm a yes.
Right. Then I'm gonna go out of order.
Okay.
Then I've got 7017. Oh, wait, you voted on that.
I did. Yep.
Then 1354. That was number 5.
I'm a yes.
Then we got you for this one. And then just the consent calendar.
I'm a yes.
All right. Let me just triple check.
Was 6926 voted on? Or was that consent?
That was a voice vote.
Okay, gotcha.
I believe that was it. You're
All
all
right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a
All
good
right,
day.
bye. You too.
So far it's working. Can you hear me?
Yes. How are
Okay, are
you?
you able to see me?
What'd you say?
Are you able to see me?
Yes.
Awesome.
All right. I'm gonna go out of order if that's okay.
Yes.
So the first one I have on here is number 7, House Bill 7087.
Okay, that's an act concerning,
Shared clean energy subscriptions.
okay, yes.
Then. Got you for that one. Then we've got the consent calendar, so that was numbers 2, 3, and 4.
Yes.
Then
Yeah, I was on when when we spoke about that.
then we've got 7017, so that's number 6.
And that concerning,
Establishing a task force to study transmission and grid enhancing technologies.
yes.
All right. And that's it.
Okay, thank you so much, Abigail.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.